All right, welcome in, you guys. It is at 3 a.m. over here, and you know what that means, guys. It is time for the post-game discussion for One Piece chapter 1151. I know, it's a break week. I probably should have put this video out a little bit earlier, but I will admit, I got lazy. You know, whenever there's a break week for One Piece, man, I just sit my ass down and I just game and goon. I call it GG time. So moving on with it, in case you're new here, how this works is that I like to go through the review video comment section and just see what people are talking about off of the latest chapter. What are they theorizing about? What are the hot topics? How do people feel about Killingham, about Luffy, about Mosa, about Emu? We are here to find out together. So with that being said, time to hop right into the comment section, starting with the top comment. We like to sort this from the top to bottom. I generally just kind of go until we hit like the 35 minute mark. I don't really time it, I just kind of go with the flow. But here we go. Top comment right here says, as soon as Zoro hears there's someone up there turning all the whites black, it is on sight. That was a top comment. To be fair, I didn't screen any of these. Just going up one more. It's my comment up here, right? My pinned comment. Was not expecting to start with this right away. So next comment says, Killingham seems to be a fishman who stays in his hybrid form to avoid discrimination from his fellow celestial dragons. An ironic existence indeed. So I kind of voiced my opinions on the Killingham appearance in the review video, but just to reiterate, I do not think he's a fishman. I see why people think that, right? The sharp teeth, people are saying that he has gills in the panel where he's first shown. I don't think those are gills. I think that's simply shading on his neck. But like I said, I can see why people think that, but it does remind me of the crazy Mihawk theories coming off of the Cross Guild reveal chapter, where Oda did the same thing. Oda shaded Mihawk's neck, and people thought Mihawk got cut. Do you guys remember that? If you were reading One Piece weekly at the end of Wano, you might remember that conversation. People were like, oh my god, Mihawk got dethroned, Vista cut him, what happened to Mihawk? But in reality, it was shading on his neckline. So as far as Killingham having gills, like I said, I can see why people think that, but that's not what I personally believe. And I just feel like there'd be so many odd plot holes. Well, not plot holes, but weirdness around Killingham being a fishman. Because like you said, does Killingham just walk around the Holy Land in his hybrid form 24/7? Does he also discriminate against other fishmen? Why is he a Holy Knight? Did he really want to get promoted? Does he love the Celestial Dragon bloodline even though he is a race besides that? I just feel like it wouldn't make sense, and that's why I do just go back to him being a mythical Zoan user. He is a Dragonomi Zoan type, so I think that is the reason why he has the sharp teeth. I think this is simply a part of his hybrid transformation, because the other option, him being a Celestial Dragon Fishman, I just feel like that's so out there, especially with Garling being his supreme commander up until just recently. Right, Garling executed Mosgard. He put him on a cross and killed him because Mosgard was defending fishmen. You're telling me that same Garling will let a dirty blood fishman into the ranks? I don't think so. I'm not too sure that would be the case. And even if he does walk around in his hybrid form, you would like to imagine that at least one of the Holy Knights would be like, hey, Killingham, de-transform. Can you go into your other hybrid form? Can you do something, Killingham? I would get really suspicious if I was hanging around a group and there's just one guy who always wore a hood and had a mask on, right? I wouldn't trust him. Who is this dude? So that is why I do not think Killingham is a fishman, just because the circumstances around that would just be so absurd in a way. I think it'd be cool. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate the plot point. I just think the plot point would be kind of crazy, right? If that does end up being true, I'd be really interested in the logistics. Did anybody smell around the Holy Land and said, I think there's a fish nearby? I think for now, I'm on the boat that it is just a part of his hybrid transformation. Sorry, that was a long tangent, but I just want to dent that because I feel like, while it's a good theory, I just don't know how I feel about it yet, right? I just don't know. On to the next comment. They say, the fact Killingham was holding back till now is insane. Plus, his design reminds me of Dellinger. And I knew the monster trio had to feel that cock wave from Emu, even if Elbaph is gigantic. They all felt it, but Zoro and Rhodes' reaction was the funniest. What was the reaction again? Okay, let me see. I'm actually curious. You say Zoro and Rhodes. Zoro, I think I remember, but Rhodes. To be fair, it has been a week since the chapter has been released, so my memory's a little bit hazy. All right, so I'm looking at it right now, and I'd say Zoro's is pretty normal. Rhodes, though, is kind of funny. Right, Zoro's just saying, huh? And then you see like his neck is vibrating, you see like the stars all around him. But for Rhodes, he's like actually sweating and he says, eek. All right, according to TCB, Rhodes is eking out, man. Yeah, I like that. But as far as Killingham goes, it's kind of nuts thinking that he was holding back. Right, for some reason, you know, Killingham was so in lieu with the game that Shamrock told him to be a part of that he said, you know what? My nightmare monsters, yeah, they just pass out for no reason, right? Like, that's essentially what it is. Like, his nightmares are immortal. They don't die. But for some reason, up until this point, Killingham was just vibing out, and his monsters could just take a nap if the giants hit them a couple of times. I like that, though, because when Killingham first brought the monsters out, they really did feel underwhelming. Like, they were cool looking, right? Remember the chapter when we saw Nidhogg, you know, the Draugrs, a crazy big mom, an octopus, right? A basilisk, you know, evil Loki, evil Nika. Like, when we saw those guys in that final panel, in that spread, it was insane, right? I was like, yo, like, this is gonna be a big battle. But and then we get Dorian Broggie showing up and Scopper showing up, and they just start one-shotting these monsters left and right. And it's like, okay, they're throwaways, like, you know, why even have them here? They're probably just gonna end up stalling the fodder. But now, you know, Killingham is bringing out version 2.0 of those nightmares, right? He's locking in. So I am curious, will these nightmares start winning against the fodder? I don't know. I think it would be cool if we got some Straw Hats fighting the monsters. Like, maybe that is where the Straw Hats who don't fight the Holy Knights go, right? Because there's only 3 Holy Knights present on the island right now. So, you know, give it to Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, and then maybe the rest of the Straw Hats end up fighting one nightmare each, which I think feels a little bit weird, you know, because Frankie already beat the Nightmare Cloud with a single radical beam. But maybe that's a good way to judge how locked in Killingham differs from laid back Killingham, right? Initially, Frankie could beat one with a radical beam, but now he needs like General Frankie, or maybe he needs like a V-Saber attack, right? I think that'd be pretty cool. That would be a good way to gauge Killingham's strength in terms of his Devil Fruit monsters. This comment says, I have a theory that the night Loki killed King Herald and his royal guards was because of Imu-sama. Through a magic circle, Imu was communicating with King Herald. She had been trying hard to establish a powerful giant army loyal to her, but Herald was stalling for time and doing the opposite, educating the children and distancing them from the old ways of war and violence. When Imu sensed this, her patience ran out and she transformed them into demons. At that moment, Loki entered the palace because he sensed a powerful haki emanating from it. Despite Loki's attempts to stop them, it was futile, especially given their regenerative abilities. This forced Loki to eat the royal family's legendary Devil Fruit, whose powers is certainly related to Nika and represents a force opposing Imu's demonic possession ability. He was then forced to kill his father and the royal guards because he knew that if they left the palace, a catastrophe similar to when Doflamingo controlled King Riku Dole III and his army would occur. Also, I like how you put his full name here, King Riku Dole III. You put a lot of respect on him, man. I like that. They would be forced to commit massacres. Yes. My simple response is yes. I pretty much agree with everything you say here. I mean, it falls in line with my theory about the whole thing too. I do believe right here, King Herald was working with Imu. He was working with the Holy Knights. But at the same time, he was like stabbing them in the back, all right? He was like an inside agent, a double agent, if you would. You know, King Herald was obviously trying to educate Elbaph. He was trying to open Elbaph up to more cultures. He was known as a very, very, very progressive king. Pretty much the opposite of what Imu and the Holy Knights wanted from him. So base level, I think that is correct. I do also think that King Herald might even have, like you said, a devil transformation. But I do not think, personally, that Imu sensed this. Imu said that King Herald made a blunder. He made a mistake, right? So in lieu of that, I don't think Imu noticed what King Herald was doing. Maybe Emu just thought that King Herald simply died, or, King Herald made a mistake in legislation and he built a school by accident. That's kind of what it felt like. Like they probably thought that King Herald was the perfect soldier up until the very end. But in reality, King Herald was always working for Team Elbaph, for Team Giant. That is my personal opinion, but I think it just falls in line with what Emu said in this latest chapter, and why Shamrock and or Somers would have visited King Herald's grave. If Emu and the Holy Knights knew that King Herald was actually betraying them the entire time, I don't think they'd put so much respect on the King Herald name. I don't think they'd be visiting his grave. I don't think they would exactly call it a blunder. I think they just call him a loser, a traitor, a snake. So because of that, because of the dialogue we have surrounding King Herald from the Holy Knights and Celestial Dragons, I do not think Emu really had a solid grasp on what King Herald was actually doing. I think Emu actually thought the blunder was that King Herald died to Loki. Which, going on with this, I do think Loki was the one who killed King Herald for sure. I mean, even Loki himself didn't dispute that, right? When Harden was saying, hey, Loki, why did you do it? Why did you kill our dad? Loki simply said, did you really think I would kill our dad for no reason? So Loki definitely knew what was happening. He probably knew about the Celestial Dragon tactics to get King Herald and Elbaph on their side. And King Herald, like you said, I think was stalling Emu, right? King Herald did not want this to happen. And maybe there wasn't a 1 versus 100 battle in the royal capital. Maybe there was never a Loki versus King Herald fight. Maybe King Herald just wanted to kill himself, or maybe he wanted Loki to kill him, and King Herald willfully took that sword to the head. That is what I think might have happened, and I think Loki was more or less forced to take on that role as the villain here, as the guy who killed his father and killed the king, because Loki is the only character that could reasonably do it, and the only character where it would be believable that he did it, right? Imagine Harden in that room that night, right? Replace Loki with Harden. Would Harden have honored his father's wishes and killed him to stop Emu's plans? Yeah, sure, maybe, but would it be believable to the rest of Elbaph? No. I mean, we know Harden. Would Harden commit regicide? Would we ever imagine Harden as a villain? No, we wouldn't, right? And I think that is why King Herald didn't have Harden do it. And instead, he picked Loki, because Loki was born as the accursed prince. Right? They blamed Loki for his mother's death. They blamed him for a horse's death. Loki over here was setting animals loose in the village. Loki was burning down houses as a kid. Loki was like 10 times the size of other giants. Like, Loki fits the bill of a madman who would kill his own father. So that is why I think Herald could only ask Loki to kill him. And maybe, to make it even more believable, right here, boom, Loki did it to eat the legendary devil fruit, right? I think that is the narrative that King Herald was trying to paint. And if that's the case, I mean, Elbaph ate it up. Everybody hates Loki now because of this event. So I think Loki is going to be a tragic hero in that sense. I think Loki is living a lie for his father's legacy, because he probably doesn't want the fact that his father was working with the world government to be public knowledge, right? That would taint his father's legacy. That would taint Elbaph's history and their culture. So I think Loki was definitely playing the bad guy that night, and he had to kill everyone in that room. As far as King Herald and the guards of the castle having demonic transformations given to them by Emu, I think that's very fair, but I just do not think that Emu knew what was happening that night. Emu probably sensed that King Herald was transformed, but by the time Emu just came over or, witnessed what was going on, they only saw the fact that King Herald and the guards are all dead. I think that is probably what happened. But also, I don't think actually that the guards were demons. I think it was just King Herald, because Jarl was one of the people in that room that night. And to our knowledge, he doesn't have a demonic transformation. So I don't think that's going to be the case. But yeah, either way though, I'm pretty much in line with you. King Herald was stalling. He's a good guy. Loki had to play the bad guy, kill his dad, and then to keep his family's honor, he just did not tell a soul about what actually happened that day. Which now, I gotta say it, man, but I am excited to see the trash talk that Emu throws his way. Because Emu knows at this point, right? Maybe back then Emu was kind of like oblivious, but currently, dude, what could Emu say to Loki and Harden to rile them up? Like, he could drop a line saying, hey, you guys are nothing like your father. Or maybe he does the opposite. He's like, you're a fool just like your father. You're a blunder. I think that'd be pretty cool. But, you know, getting back to the brass tacks, I love all of this, and even my theory too, mainly because it makes Loki redeemable to Harald. Right, because Harald has this brotherly hatred for him because Loki, in his eyes, just straight up murdered his dad. So I would just love it if they just reconcile somewhere, somehow, and they work together to take down Emu. Because I genuinely do just keep on thinking back to that panel of King Herald, you know, towering over Kid Loki and Kid Harald, saying, hey guys, you know, one day, please, I want you guys to work together to save Elbaph. You know, help Elbaph out. And I want to see that panel. Every giant has it. Every paired giant has it. They have a Hakaku sovereignty, Dory Brogy, Big Mom Kaido. Not exactly giants, but they're large in size, right? Dude, these giant pairings, man, when they come together, miracles can happen. So I would love it if Loki and Harald came together and just sent one Emu's way for everything Emu did to their dad. Wow, that comment really took a while, huh? I really went in deep on that one. But overall, just want to say this one more time. I do like that theory. You know, even if I'm not right, I do like this theory. I think it's pretty solid. Right here, they say, crazy theory. What if Emu is pitch black because of some correlation to Domi Reversi? And now we have Luffy, the White Warrior, and Bonnie, some future, where she is also the White Warrior, and they need to do something together and or surround Emu to get rid of Emu's pitch blackness. I don't know how to flesh out theories, but it was an interesting thought that popped up to me. First off, thank you for the 10, brother. I really appreciate it. And as far as this goes, I do like that. You know, it kind of goes back to the theory that Emu really is a silhouette. You know, Emu has not been hidden this entire time. That's actually just Emu. And, you know, I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. And I think it would be really cool if there was a way to remove his silhouette forcefully. It would kind of remind me of, I don't know if you guys watched the show as a kid, but it's a show that was on Cartoon Network called Codename Kids Next Door. And growing up, man, I was a huge fan of the delightful kids from down the lane. It sounds silly saying it now, like after all these years, but I really like those guys, right? They were the villains of the show. They were like the evil versions of our main cast, essentially. And they were just 5 goobers who never left each other's side. And they kind of remind me of the Gorosei looking back at it, right? Just 5 people always clumped together. And they had a father whose name was literally Father, and their father, saying father so many times sounds weird, but he was this pitch black figure. He was just a pitch black demonic figure, essentially. He had fire, he had like a little pipe as well. He was really cool. And that entire time, he was just a silhouette, essentially, until he was in a fight and they literally knocked the silhouette out of him and they reveal what he actually looks like. I think that could be what's happening here. Like, Emu really just makes himself pitch black normally, naturally. And then when they get into fight mode, you know, when we actually fight the real body, we have to like punch color back into him. I think that'd be pretty damn cool. But as far as Luffy and Bonnie goes here on this island, I do think they will act, like you said, as white pieces in the board game Domi Reversi. I do think Luffy and Bonnie will be critical when it comes to turning the giants back to normal or into extra warriors of liberation, right? Because when you think about it, you know, the giants were all neutral in the beginning. Emu is flipping them to the black side. Instead of us just turning the giants back to normal, what if we flip them to the white side and they get like the Sun God Nika hair? What if they get like Sun God Nika power-ups? I'm not saying they all have to be Looney Tunes characters where they're all just stretching and, you know, dancing and everything, but I think just a simple power-up from Luffy and Bonnie could go a long ways. And back on Egghead, we were already theorizing what Bonnie's awakening would look like. Because Bonnie, you know, according to the SBS and everything else, when a Paramecia awakens, they can use their powers on outside forces, you know, objects, other people. Bonnie can already do that, right? Bonnie can already age people up and down, objects up and down. So what would her awakening really look like? If Bonnie were to awaken, I would not be shocked if she's able to tap into different timelines of other characters, right? Just like how she turns herself into the Sun God Nika variant of herself, maybe she can do the same for the giants. And funny enough, if we were on any other island dealing with any other tribe or race of people, I probably wouldn't want this. But these are giants we're talking about, right? These guys worship the sun god. They love the sun god. I mean, hell, even back on Egghead Island, the minute Luffy just came out with the Drums of Liberation, the Giants were already dancing, right? So I think it fits really well if the Giants do become liberation warriors to an extent. At the very least, I would want Harden to get that boost. You know, people don't know why I like Harden so much, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't like Harden that much, but I believe in Harden. You know, there's a difference there. I believe in Harden's potential, and I'm really excited to see him step up to the pitch. Because Harden, brother, he's being dog walked all over. I have yet to see a positive Harden take out there. And I admit, you know, I also throw oil onto the fire, right? I love making fun of that dude. You know, over here, extreme dipping Mac of Ice, being one punched by Luffy in Gear Second and Dressrosa. But, you know, all jokes aside, he's the Prince of Elbaph, right? He is a guy that wants to be king of the Giants, and I believe him. I do, right? I'll still make fun of him, don't get me wrong, but I do believe in Harden. So bring on the white version of Harden, brother. I'm all for it. All right, so this one says, Sai glazing Killingham while he laughed at Madara. Hear me out. I love Madara, dude. Madara Uchiha, top 5 villain coming out of Naruto. But you gotta admit, the minute you bring Hashirama into the equation, the minute you mention Hashirama, it becomes a hot dog swallowing contest, and Madara wins 10 out of 10. Madara, he would put Joey Chestnut at a commission, brother. Like, it's crazy. I love Madara, but man, like, when it comes to Hashirama, I don't know. I don't know what he sees, brother. Hashirama looked good in the flashbacks, but you know, in the final war, I know it's Ito Tensei Hashirama, right? It's Hashirama that got outscaled by his own blood cells in Madara. Like, I don't like the excuses. I don't like the excuses. So, on to the next comment. They say, this was Chopper's moment. Falling from the sky feet like Kaido. My hero moment like Deku. Body acting without thinking. And running in the sky like his Gear 5th captain. My boy is him. Okay, I thought you were being serious for a moment. When I read this first line, I genuinely had to like think in my head, like, wait, what did Chopper do? You know, I was like, wait a minute, like, what did Chopper do in this chapter? I was like, he just told Luffy what's happening, and that was it. But yeah, I love the Chopper gag. I hope Chopper does something here. You know, I get it. Chopper's a doctor. He healed Scopper. That's a big W. But, you know, sorry, guys. Your boy's a meathead. You know, I just want Chopper to get a really good fight in. I want Chopper to just go upstairs, slap the out of Killingham. I don't know. Maybe he sees Emu and he's like, wha-bam! Just something for Chopper. Give me some physical feats. Chopper has the feel-good moments. He has the gags. You know, he loves, what is it? Cotton candy. But I'd love to see Chopper prescribe someone a good old-fashioned ass-whooping. All right, I like this comment. It says, why does Sai look like a completely different person every video, man? 44 likes. Do I look different? I don't know if I look different every video, but let me see the replies for this one. It's his hair. Yeah, I could see that. It's called a shower. Well, I will admit, some videos I do take after a shower, so my hair is like either wet or dry or just pulled back or something. It kind of looks like Lord Farquaad. My God, Lord Farquaad, huh? Not chill on my dog. That's my boy too. Domi Reversi. He's come so far since Tokyo Drift, Godzilla. This one just says Godzilla. What does that even mean? I love that. So this one says, I believe I've pieced together Emu's plan in one piece. Emu has the power to transform people into demons, as we saw with Dory and Brogy in Elbaph. During their transformation, Emu mentioned that Elbaph had no ruler and needed a new one, which caused other giants in the Giant Warrior Pirates to transform as well. This suggests that when a leader, someone viewed as a king, is turned into a demon, their loyal followers are also affected due to their allegiance. This connects to the ancient war against Joy Boy. The 20 kingdoms fought against Joy Boy because Emu manipulated their kings, turning them and their followers against him. Back then, there were only 20 kings, but now there are hundreds of rulers across the world. Emu's strategy may be to create or control weak kings globally. When the time is right, or when Oda chooses, Emu could transform these kings into demons, causing their loyal subjects to follow suit. This would give Emu control over vast populations. This theory explains why the Revs, led by Dragon, is so crucial. By liberating countries and overthrowing these weak kings, Dragon is unknowingly, or perhaps knowingly, disrupting Emu's plans. Each kingdom freed weakens Emu's potential demon army, making Dragon a key player in the story. I like this. I've heard the theories about the 20 kingdoms being manipulated by Emu. I've heard theories about Marines being changed, pirates being changed, but I never once really thought about the other kingdoms, right? The weak kings, as you call them. And I think that would be really interesting, and I think it would be a really good way to bring about the final war and to make it interesting even. Because as it stands, the world government is outnumbered. Base level, they are outnumbered. Because who do they really have? They have the Celestial Dragons, they have the Holy Knights, the Gorosei, and Emu, and that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, by the way, the Castle Guards, those guys wearing like the Patrick Starfish, helmets, they have those guys too. If you really boil it down, they're outnumbered. Especially since Emu is potentially trying to end the world, right? He's rising the water levels, countries are sinking. The minute they find out that this is Emu's doing, you pretty much have the entire world versus the world government. And I get it, right? You gotta count the Marine side. The Marines are there too. But when you really boil it down, the Marines are a separate branch. That is why I wouldn't be shocked if at some point, maybe at the very end of the story, if the Marines actually betray the world government, right? Because the Marines and the world government, they have very different MOs, right? The Marines are only following the world government because that is what they know to do, right? They've been doing that for so long. That's kind of just their mission. But when you boil it down, they want to protect the world and humanity, or at least I'd like to hope so, right? I really don't think every Marine out there is a Celestial Dragon knobsucker. Maybe a couple of them are, right? Like Green Bull, but Momonga, Smoker, Kobe, Shatone, Garp, Sengoku, like, I really feel like if you gave them a button, right? Do you support the WG in destroying the world? Or do you help the world beat the WG and save the world? Like, I feel like I know what they'd pick, or at least I like to hope so. And if we have the Marines on our side, again, we would be outnumbering the world government. Unless they do this right here, right? Unless Emu turns all the weak kings globally and their citizens into demons. I think that'd be perfect. I do like this a lot. And this would give us a reason to learn more about outside countries. Like, for example, right, King Seki, the king of Lelucia. When we saw him at the Reverie, nobody really thought we'd get Lelucia fleshed out. And then here we have it. Lelucia is a very crucial plot point in the story now. But now, what about King Hamburg? What about Kano Kingdom and all those other guys who attended the Reverie? Like, I do think this is the perfect way for Oda to flesh out the entire world in tandem. Emu simply says, hey, if you attended the Reverie, you're now part of my Domi Reversity. Like, you didn't know what happened, but, I put a sigil on you, I put a magic mark on your body, and now, you're mine. I think that would be pretty damn cool. On to the next one. $2. Appreciate it, brother. They say, could Robin turn against the Straw Hats, not because she wants to, but because she is controlled? One Piece keeps returning to the theme of betrayal. Blackbeard was once a trusted member of Whitebeard's crew before turning on him and stealing a devil fruit. York betrayed Vegapunk, someone who treated her like a daughter. Now we've seen Gunko fall under mind control. Someone originally betrayed Joy Boy. These aren't isolated moments. They feel like signs that betrayal and control are a part of the final story. If it ever happens within the Straw Hat crew, Robin might be the one it happens to. Here's why. Robin has said directly that a darkness lives inside of her and can sometimes take over. This has been part of her character from the very beginning. No other Straw Hat talks this way about themselves. Her eyes have a unique circular iris pattern, identical to Emu's. This is extremely rare in the series and is likely intentional. The visual similarity could hint at a deeper connection to ancient power or influence. Robin is the only Straw Hat with the same pattern, and it might not be a coincidence. If mind control appears again in the story, Robin is the most likely candidate. Her own words, her eye design, and the increasing theme of betrayal all point to her as the one who could be turned against the crew. Alright, so evil Robin. I wouldn't mind if some of the Straw Hats got Domi Reversi'd, right? I'm looking at the Straw Hats up in the Sun Realm explicitly. I'm looking at Jinbei, Usopp, Chopper. Well, Chopper's not there anymore. Frankie, Robin is up there, Brooke is up there, Nami's up there as well. And I could see them being turned for a moment, but I don't think it would be like a full-on betrayal. You know, I could see Imu turning them into demons until Luffy and the gang figure out how to un-Domi Reversi them. As far as betrayal being a main theme in One Piece, I agree. This has always been the case, right? There's always been like 1 or 2 betrayers in each and every arc. So yeah, I don't think that's shocking. But as far as betrayal within the Straw Hat crew, that's a tougher one to see, right? I mean, even the way you described it, it wouldn't even be a betrayal. It's mainly just mind control, which is kind of what happens with Domi Reversi. So I don't think it would be like a full-on, like, Robin becomes evil for like a whole arc. I think more so it would be like, hey, you know, Robin and some of the Straw Hats become evil for a chapter and a half because of Domi Reversi. And then we could end up fixing it or saving them through the power of the drums of liberation, right? I think that is generally going to be the case. And as far as Robin having the same eye pattern as Imu, I also think that is very important. I think it's a detail that Oda has distinguished multiple times in the series, but I think that's because Robin might be one of the most pivotal characters when it comes to taking Imu down. I just constantly think back to that one cover page, it wasn't a cover page, sorry, color spread, where you see Robin playing a game of chess, and Robin is using the Straw Hat crew as the pieces. You know, Robin is the mastermind, as depicted in that color spread, of the Straw Hats. And, you know, we know that Imu loves board games. I mean, hell, their ability, Domi Reversi, is literally a board game. So maybe Robin is just the perfect counter, or the character we need on our side to put Imu in their place. I mean, hell, we could even say that Robin is a Imu parallel, right? Maybe Robin is the good timeline Imu from the Void Century. I think that'll be kind of interesting, right? I think when we hit the Void Century, we're going to get a lot of parallel-esque characters, and it would be cool if, you know, Robin and Imu had that connection. Robin's like the good version, Imu's the evil version. I'm not saying they're like one-to-one, but maybe their backstories are kind of similar. Maybe their epithets are similar, a similar upbringing, similar design even. I think that all would be pretty cool. Luffy's voice of all things is starting to awaken even more. That is how I knew it was Chopper falling from the Sun Realm. I think Dragon will know how to use it. Ryosoken used the voice of all things to hit the core of objects and will teach Luffy how to control it. Using the voice of all things to hit the core of objects. I think that'd be pretty cool. I don't think... So Ryosoken, that's a Dragon Fist. If we're saying that this is the case, and that means that Sabo has that ability. I don't think Sabo has it. I don't think the voice of all things will be an offensive ability. I think the voice of all things is more of like a peaceful ability. Like, it truly is just a form of communication. And thinking about it now, I wonder if the voice of all things is kind of like what Imu is doing with the Gorosei and with the Holy Knights, right? With how they're talking to them telepathically. I think that could be the case. But as far as Luffy having the voice of all things, and that's how he's sensing Chopper, I'm all for it. I think that is a good explanation. You know, voice of all things, it could even be like advanced observation hockey. I don't mind either theory. I don't really have a dog in that fight right now. You know, if you really just, you know, strapped me to a board and dropped water on my head for 5 days straight in China, I would say that it's probably observation, but I can see why Voice of All Things is a very solid candidate. So going down, another comment from the same person. They say, I love Chopper running in the air like Gear 5th. Is that Geppo-Skywalk? And we could say it's Geppo or Skywalk, or we could just say that it's a gag. You know, Oda, you know, back in the day, man, if this happened in like chapter 100, it's funny because like I feel like a lot of people wouldn't really bat an eye at it. But now that we have so many abilities like Geppo, like Skywalk, like Gear 5th, you know, with Crazy Zoe and Devil Fruits and Chopper being a weird human model, like we just always have to have some reasoning for it. But I think the fun answer is that it's just a gag. You know, Chopper saw it, just kind of ran the air, and that's it. That's it up for me too. I don't think it's skywalking. It could just be a okay, there we go. Comedic way to show Chopper speeding up. Or if you want a wild theory, Chopper's fruit can probably awaken some White Warrior form. So this is Oda's trademark for... See, that's the problem too. Well, not a problem, but that's another thing, right? Could be a gag, but also could just be some insane Oda foreshadowing. You never know, right? You know, it's one of those moments that we could look back at if Chopper gets some crazy power up, and we could be like, yo, it was right there. It was in front of our eyes. If You look at the manga right after the time skip, Luffy was foreshadowing Gear 5th. Yes. I think many times Luffy has foreshadowed Gear 5th. I think Oda always knew what he wanted to do with Gear 5th. He just didn't fully realize it until Wano. That has always been my takeaway. Like, I think Oda knew where he was going, but he didn't really nail it in until Wano. And nothing wrong with that, by the way. You know, there's nothing wrong with adding more to a story that is over 1,000 chapters long. You know, that's just how it goes. Maybe Luffy sensing Chopper was because he's a member of the crew, thus a piece on the white side of the reversey game. First up, thank you for the 2, brother. I appreciate it. And yes, it could also just be because, you know, like you said, Luffy is that familiar with Chopper. Luffy and Chopper are like this. And if we're saying that this is either the voice of all things or advanced observation haki, I wonder how far we are from Luffy being able to talk to Chopper from that distance. Like, you know how cool that would be? If Luffy, out of nowhere, pulled off an emu feat, a voice of all things feat, where in his mind, Luffy's like, Chopper, where are you? And then Chopper's like, what the hell? What is this noise? How do I hear Luffy? He's not even here yet. I think that'd be really sick. You know, maybe that's what we're gonna get. You know, that could be a genuine power-up that Luffy could get pretty soon. Would it be beneficial? Maybe in some instances, but because Luffy isn't like a strategist, I don't think it would be that important. You know, give that ability to Usopp or Robin or Nami. I think that ability would be really cracked. But for Luffy, what would he say during a battle where you'd be like, yo, like, thank you, Luffy. Thank you for that information, Captain. I don't really know. You know, maybe Luffy just says, hey, guys, like, this is their weakness. Or, hey, guys, I did this, go over there. But like I said, Luffy isn't exactly a strategist, which is why I think Oda put Robin playing chess in that color spread and not Luffy playing chess, because Luffy doesn't know how to play chess. Barto the cannibal also had spiked teeth. Could that be a tribe or race? Funny enough, I actually looked up Barto to see if there was a reasoning as to why he had spiked teeth, and there was no reason given. You know, he just has it, which is why I don't think it would be absurd if Oda either 1, like you said, introduces a new tribe or race, or 2, Oda simply says that spiked teeth are cool, right? He gives the edgiest characters spiked teeth, because I think that is also just very plausible. I mean, we are in the world of One Piece, where we have crazy body designs 24/7. Big Mom. Why is she so damn big? She's not a giant. You know, she isn't some special tribe or race. She's literally just a human that grew up to the size of Godzilla. You know, a size of a skyscraper. And that doesn't make any sense. But then again, you could say, like you said, could be a new tribe like Kuma, right? Before we hit the Kuma flashback and the Buccaneer reveal, we all thought Kuma was human. Like, we didn't really expect him to be anything different. So it's one of those, like, will Oda do it? Will he not do it? I'm not sure yet. But as far as Killingham goes, you know, tying it back to Killingham, the guy with spiked teeth in this chapter, I don't think he's a different tribe or race, because I think he'd just be discriminated against by his friends and cohorts. Oda had to manufacture more Zoro versus Sanji and Rayleigh versus Gabon convos to distract us from the fact that Killingham is the best God Knight. I'm glad people are on board. You know, funny enough, I ranked the God Knights in terms of how much I like them when we first got them revealed, and Killingham was at the bottom of my list. But now that we have his design, brother, he's my number 1. You know, in terms of design, man, I kind of like him more than Shamrock. You know, more than Garland, Gunko, and Sommers. Yeah, that human hybrid design, it goes freaking hard. Now I'm just curious what his full human design looks like. You know, when he goes full human form, does he still have the sharp teeth, or does it go away? Not really sure at this point. Sai, maybe the reason Gabon was able to cut Summers up like he did was because of his observation haki. Based on the chapter and the fact that it is leaning heavily into that, maybe, using the flow of future events, one can use their haki to attack specifically in such a way that it halts the healing process. I generally agree. I think I even mentioned it in this video or the last one, but I do think observation haki could be key when it comes to hurting the Holy Knights, right? Observation haki is still kind of, it's in a weird realm where Oda can easily expand it. I mean, hell, even with Film Red, we saw like a brand new utilization of observation haki where Usopp and Yasopp, they linked eyesight. We don't know how that happened, but they link eyesight. So I wouldn't be shocked if that's the case. I mean, we do know that Scopper is the Sanji parallel. Sanji apparently excels in observation hockey, so Scopper must excel at it too. Scopper was the only one who sensed the Holy Knights when they first came here to Elbaph. I think this could just be an observation hockey related feat. Would not be bad. And also, it would put Usopp on the map here too, right? This is, one way or another, going to be Usopp's arc. How can Usopp shine out here? Well, with observation hockey, brother. I do not hate it. Of course, if this is the case, I do want the other Straw Hats to learn observation hockey. You know, I'm looking at like Robin, at Frankie, at Brooke, at Nami. You know, I'm not saying they have to be masters of observation, but I would love it if the Straw Hats just had basic hockey in general, right? Basic armament, basic observation, just because that's kind of expected in the new world. I really do appreciate what the Straw Hats bring to the table, but brother, Vice Admirals, the bozos that we beat on Egghead, all have basic observation and armament. That's like a requirement. So the fact that some of these Straw Hats don't have it yet, man, I'm like, yo, they don't have to use it 24/7, but just like once, you know, just one time, please, please, please. And next comment, they say, damn, Sai, I thought you would have mentioned the long neck giant, tall man, since you love the long neck tribe so much. Okay. Yeah, there's a reason why I didn't mention tall man. What a dumbass name, bro. Tall man? Okay. Yeah, get it, guys. He's tall and he's got a long neck. Okay, yeah. I moved on from that one. That is why I did not bring up tall man. I just did not like that guy one bit. I hope he doesn't get undomi reversing. All right, so here we have it. Potentially the last comment. We're going to read this video. And of course, it is a $100 super chat, my guy. Brother, I really appreciate it. And I do want to take the time to say that I genuinely appreciate all the super chats in today's video. This might be the first comment video I've done where we've had multiple of them at once, right? I was kind of shocked when I looked back at it. I was like, no way, what's going on here, right? Oh, was it a special chapter? I don't know, man. But you know, never feel the need, of course, to drop any money on these videos. I do these videos mainly for fun. You know, I kind of fall into this routine and I just love making content, man. But you know, if people want to drop that, I really appreciate it. And you know, I take it with stride, and I really would not be here today without any of you guys. I mean, that is like the genuine truth. It sounds corny, right? Like, without you guys, I wouldn't be here. But I mean, that is the case. Like, this video is a pure comment video based off of what you guys are saying down there. So, you know, as much as you guys love my videos, I really would not be here doing this if you guys weren't here in the first place. So again, I truly appreciate all the love and support, man. They say, how's it going? Good, sir. Been listening to your videos for a year and has made my 60-hour work week easier. Before we get to Elbaph backstories, could I get your opinion on what makes a great backstory? Most One Piece content creators will say that Kuma's backstory was one of the greatest in the post-era. Greatest in the post-era. I'm trying to think. Fishman Island. I liked Otohime's backstory, but it wasn't like great. You know, Punk Hazard. We got no good backstories there, but I'm gonna say it right now. Dressrosa, Rebecca and Kuros, I think was actually underrated. Rebecca and Kuros, man, oh dude, my heartstrings. I thought it was very drawn out, and if you're an anime only, you probably hate that backstory. But I did like Rebecca and Kuros. After that, Whole Cake Island, the Sanji backstory didn't really move me. I like Sanji's story as a whole, but his backstory, I was like, I don't know, man. You know, Sanji should have locked in. You know, Sanji should have been Judge's #1 son. But of course, you know, his DNA didn't, you know, let him do that, of course. And then going to Wano, the Odin backstory wasn't my favorite. I thought it was good. You know, I think there's a lot of good backstories in One Piece. There's not any bad ones. But as far as a great one goes, I think I would say that Kuma's backstory stands head and shoulders above the rest. Okay, so they say, my question is, what makes a good backstory into a great one? Is it the lore, the tragedy, the world building, interactions with the Straw Hat crew? Thank you, sir, and thank you for the great content. Okay, personally, you know, it's all very subjective, but to me at least, what makes a great backstory is the tragedy. It is the sadness. And I'd even say it's the sacrifice as well. I think there's a lot of things that could make a great backstory. And I'm trying to think about like other animes where I've seen a backstory that I've thoroughly enjoyed. And I can't think of many. I think everybody has decent backstories out there, but when I think about One Piece backstories, I don't think they need interactions with the Straw Hat crew to be good. I don't even think it needs crazy lore or world building. I think for me, I just really enjoy romantic aspects of them. I'm a lover at heart. I really am. And I love tragic love stories where nothing works out, right? Kuma, I liked his backstory. The Bonnie segment was great, don't get me wrong. But what I really enjoyed were by far the Ginny portions. Kuma and Ginny's life, Kuma losing Ginny, Ginny coming back and dying. I thought that was fantastic. Of course, I'm still a little bit hung up on the fact that Kuma didn't go to the Holy Land. I know that's kind of like a hot take. Oh, Dragon has a plan. The Revs don't want Kuma to do it. Maybe a celestial dragon has Ginny and he's too powerful. It was Garling. It was Shamrock. And it's like, okay, like I could see that. But, I wish we would have gotten a better explanation. I really wish we would have gotten a line or two about why they couldn't do it, right? Just something to make me feel better. Because, think about Ginny as a Holy Land slave, brother. For 2 years, that every night, Ginny was just hoping and praying that the person who walks through those doors is none other than Kuma, Ivankov, or even Dragon. Ginny, every day was probably like, oh, they're gonna save me, they're gonna save me, they're gonna save me. And then, nobody ever shows up. Imagine that. That's awful. So I do like the tragedy. I love the sadness. I love the romantic aspects. For Kuma, though, like I said, I just wish we clarified why they didn't go. I would have loved just to hear they tried. Maybe they tried off screen. They failed. Okay, I can live with that. But just the vagueness of it all, I'm just like, leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But, thinking back to other One Piece backstories I enjoyed, I had to really just take a second off camera to think about this. But I actually liked Gil Tesoro's backstory. And funny enough, I do think Gil Tesoro's backstory was a prototype Kuma backstory, right? I don't know if you guys watch Film Gold, but in Film Gold, we don't know much about Gil Tesoro until the very end. When Luffy's about to land that final punch on Gil Tesoro and knocks him out, spoiler alert, Luffy wins, Gil Tesoro gets a very quick flashback of him before he became who he is today, before he ate the devil fruit. And he was a simple guy. He was poor. He became a slave. He fell in love with another girl who was also a slave, and she was bought by Celestial Dragon. He never saw her again, and he just crashed out. That was a backstory that was done in 30 seconds, and I loved it. I thought it was short, sweet, simple, to the point. Didn't really have any world building, didn't have any big lore, didn't interact with the Straw Hat crew. It was just straightforward, and I really enjoyed it. For me, like I said, I think I always fall back on romantic tragedy. That is where my heart lies and dies, essentially. But yeah, that is my own personal take, and I even thought about like other animes outside of One Piece, and if there's any backstories I enjoyed. And I'm gonna butcher the guy's name, but there's a manga I really like. It's like one of my top 5 actually. It's all finished if you guys want to read it. It is from the creator of Blue Lock. Before he started Blue Lock, it's called Kami-sama no Itori. I could be butchering that name, but in English it is pronounced as "Do as God Says." There are 2 parts of it. There's part 1, which is 20 chapters, and then there's part 2, which is like 150. It's completed all the way through. I would highly recommend it. But this series had a character named, I think, Ushimaru. Okay, I'm just gonna look this up. I feel like I'm butchering too much right now. Kami-sama no Itori, as the God's Will. All right, so I even butchered the name of the manga. It's actually As the God's Will, which you could say close enough, right? Close enough. Here we go. His name is Ushimitsu. So Ushimitsu, to sum up his backstory really nice and simply, he was a loner, had no friends. He met a friend. It was this girl. Girl dies. He crashes out, essentially. He becomes a psycho. And I really do just like how short, sweet, and simple that is. And I think I do just get hung up on the idea and love lost love. And, even thinking back to when I said I really enjoyed Rebecca and Kyros' backstory, there was a lost love there too, right? Kyros had Scarlet. Scarlet died. Diamante killed her. And I just really enjoy that. So for me, at least, that is what makes a good backstory great. Of course, like I said, it's all subjective, right? People might not feel the same way. People might not even like that trope. But for me, that's like, ooh. you know, it tugs on the heartstrings, man. It really does. More so than other backstories in One Piece. So yeah, that is my personal take. And again, thank you for the super chat, brother. But with that being said, though, guys, like I said, we've gone on long enough. So we're going to go ahead and call it here. Thank you all again for being here and watching this video until the very end. Let me know, for you guys, what makes a good backstory great? Do you agree with my take? Do you think it has to be the lore? Do you think it has to be the world building, interactions with the crew? Let me know down below. I would love to hear all of that good stuff. And, you know, also, just want to rope this in. I'm not saying great backstories have to not have lore, world building, and interaction with the Straw Hat crew. I think simply that those are additives, right? You know, the main base of the soup is the tragic romance for me. And then the lore, the world building, the Straw Hats, like those are all spices, which always can make it better. But they're not always necessary. But yeah, for you guys, what makes a good backstory great? And again, let me know what you thought about this chapter down below. What do you think about all the comments we read? And what are you guys expecting for One Piece chapter 1152? Because it is right around the corner. You guys take care until then, though. My name is Sai, and I'm signing out. Peace.